Welcome to this slow, boring history for sleep. In tonight's story, we will wander through medieval work and craft, adjust to a comfortable volume, and rest well. Before sunrise, when roosters still doze and only a thin silver mist hangs across the fields, one sound sometimes stirs first, the hollow sigh of a leather bellows. It comes from a low stone workshop near the crossroads, where a faint orange glow leaks between shutters. This is the village forge, a place of warmth and metal, of sweat and steady rhythm. To live in a medieval village is to know this place well. You may be a farmer, a miller, a brewer, a shepherd. All roads lead here when something breaks or must be made. The blacksmith is not merely a tradesman. He is part mechanic, part engineer, part quiet guardian of the community's strength. Fire before dawn. The smith wakes before most folk. His cottage, usually attached to the forge itself, smells of smoke and warm bread left by wife or daughter. Outside, stars fade as he crosses to his hearth. Last night's coals may still hold a whisper of heat. If so, he stirs them with practiced care. If not, he strikes flint to steel, catching spark on dry moss. Soon the fire takes, feeding on charcoal he has stored all year. Charcoal is precious. In spring and autumn, woodcutters burn oak and beech in slow, smothered piles to create it, a smoky labor the smith often oversees. Without charcoal, his fire would burn too cool for iron. He tends the bellows, great leather lungs hinged to a beam, pumping air until the heart of his forge glows white. Sparks leap upward like small fireflies, and shadows jitter across the timbered walls. The forge smells different from any other place. Sweet, dry charcoal, acrid iron scale, damp leather, a faint tang of oil. To step inside at dawn is to enter another world, half workshop, half cavern of flame. Tools of the trade. Every tool has its spot. The anvil, massive, iron face squats at the center like an altar. Hammers hang nearby, cross peen for drawing metal, ball peen for rounding, straight peen for edging. Tongs of every length line the wall, each shaped to grip some particular stock. Hardy tools fit the anvil's square hole, swages, fullers, cutters. Beside the fire stand buckets, one of water for quench it, one of oil for slow cooling, and sometimes a tub of sand to catch sparks or temper blades. The smith knows his tools like friends. Each bears scars of long use. Each fits his hand's memory. Apprentices are taught first to clean and return them in perfect order, for a smith's rhythm falters if he must search when metal is white hot. Morning trade. As the fire wakes, so does the village. Soon boots scuff on packed earth outside. The first arrival may be a farmer with a plowshare cracked on a hidden stone. He lifts the heavy iron onto a bench with a groan of relief. Next comes a shepherd boy clutching broken shears. A brewer's servant might appear needing a fresh hoop or cracked barrel. The smith nods, inspects, and sets each item aside, already deciding which will heat first. Payment varies. Some customers carry coin, but more often they bring eggs, butter, wool, or promise of grain come harvest. The smith keeps mental tallies. He knows which neighbors pay promptly, which struggle, which repay with favors. In a community where cash is rare, trust is as vital as hammer. Then comes the sound of hooves. Horses are the blacksmith's special pride. Whether great cart beast or small farm pony, each must be shod for work. Shoeing requires patience. The animal snorts, uneasy at sparks and clang. The smith speaks softly, lifts hoof, trims horn with practiced knife. A glowing shoe, fresh from fire, is pressed briefly to shape hoof. Steam hisses, the scent sharp but harmless. Nails are driven quick and sure, clenched tight, and the horse stamps ready for road. Farmers judge a smith by his farriery. A well-shod horse is strength for plow and wagon alike. Apprentices and learning. Few men are born smiths. Most begin as apprentices at 12 or 13, sent by parents or bound to master by formal agreement. The apprentice lives half servant, half student, stoking fire, working bellows, sweeping floor, fetching water, grinding edges. Yet he also watches how master reads iron's color, how he lifts hammer with grace, how each sound tells of heat or hardness. Training lasts years. A boy learns first to strike while master holds heavy sledging in rhythm, sparks flying. Next he shapes nails, rivets small hooks. Slowly he learns welding, heating two pieces to white, sprinkling sand, striking just so until metal fuses seamless. Only after long practice may he fashion complex items or attempt tempering of blades. When ready, he becomes journeyman free to travel and work in other forges, seeking mastery and perhaps someday opening his own shop. Guilds, where towns are large enough, protect the craft. They set prices, quality, and training standards. Even in villages without formal guild, smiths share a brotherhood of skill. Strangers passing through may trade tips or borrow coal in need. The metal's journey. Iron itself arrives by trade and toil. Local ore, dug from shallow pits or bogs, is smelted in simple furnaces called bloomeries. Charcoal feeds the fire until ore yields a spongy bloom of iron. This crude lump is hammered to drive out slag, then carted to smiths. Some villages buy bars from merchants traveling with pack horses, others smelt their own. A smith learns to judge quality by sound and spark. Good iron rings true and spit bright white sparks when ground. Poor iron spits dull red. Charcoal, too, is vital and costly. Woodsmen cut timber in winter, stack and smother it under turf to burn slowly, producing the light, hot fuel. Without steady supply, a forge cools. Thus smith's ties to woodcutters and merchants are close. He is part of a hidden network that keeps metalwork alive. Seasons of work. The forge's rhythm follows the farming year. Spring plows and harrows are mended, horses reshod for fresh tillage, scythes sharpened for hay. Summer. Carts creak under grain, their wheels and axles need constant care. Hoes, sickles, knives pass through forge for quick fixes. Autumn. Tools sharpened for harvest, cider presses and wine screws repaired. Hunters ask for arrowheads and boar spears. Winter. With fields resting, work turns to domestic and craft. Hearth pokers, hinges, locks, cooking spit, ornate candle holders, and sometimes fine commissions ironwork for church door or weather vane for manor. In cold months, the forge becomes village hearth. People linger by fire's warmth, trading news while Smith works. Children watch sparks with awe. In summer the doors stand wide, swallows dart in and out, and heat shimmers while sweat runs down Smith's arms. Rain on the roof hisses softly as it cools iron smoke. More than a tradesman. Because he touches every life, the smith is often trusted advisor. Travelers ask him about road conditions. Neighbors pause to share worries while waiting. He may quietly keep tally of who is struggling mending tools on credit when harvest fails. Some villagers believe forge smoke drives away illness. Horses are led in circle round fire to cure lameness. Sick children pass briefly through doorway to banish evil. The smith may smile, unsure if it works, but tradition is strong. Festivals depend on him too. For weddings he forges new locks or handsome iron gifts. For fairs he makes bells and spits. For building barns he shapes nails by handful. When church needs new bell frame or weathercock, he is called. In a world without mass production, his skill is the difference between want and plenty. Stories by the anvil. Every forge gathers stories. Farmers arrive cursing rocks that broke a plow. A bride might commission simple iron ring when gold is beyond reach. Once a traveling knight rides in, armor dented from skirmish. The smith and apprentice spend hours reshaping breastplate with careful blows, and by night the knight offers coin and tale of border wars. Pilgrims bring news of distant shrines, merchants tell of far cities. Thus even a quiet village learns of the wide world through forge gossip. Children beg for trinkets. Many a boy treasures first small hook or ring hammered from scrap. Some keep old nails as charms. Apprentices from other towns sometimes visit, testing skills and learning local tricks. Over years, the forge becomes archive of tiny encounters, each echoing in ring of hammer, faith and fire. Faith mingles with heat. A small crucifix hangs near anvil, dark with soot. The smith might mutter a quick prayer before tempering a blade or striking final weld. On St. Clement's Day, patron of blacksmiths, villagers bring offerings, bread, ale, candles. Sometimes the priest blesses forge itself, sprinkling holy water on anvil and bellows. Few crafts feel as close to mystery as shaping earth's stone with fire into tools that plow, build, and defend. Evening quiet. At day's end, the forge glows softer. The last horse shod, the last hinge filed smooth. Customers gather goods, paying in coin, barter, or promise. Children linger, sleepy in warmth, eyes bright at sparks. Apprentice sweeps floor, banks fire under ash to smolder until dawn. The smith hangs hammers, oils tongs, and steps outside. His body aches, hands rough and blackened, but heart is calm. He has kept the community alive another day, fields ready, carts rolling, doors secure. Above, stars prick a velvet sky. From cottages drift smells of supper and distant song. The forge's place in the world. In chronicles, kings wage war and merchants cross seas, but none of it would stand without countless humble forges. Each village depends on one, a quiet anchor of survival. The forge is workshop, news house, healer, and hearth. Its fire links earth to sky, ore to bread, danger to safety. So when you think of the Middle Ages, think not only of castles or cathedrals, but of this modest place, sparks flying into dusk, hammer ringing steady, a man and his apprentice shaping glowing metal, while neighbors wait and talk. It is here, in such small fiery rooms, that the true life of the age was forged. Before the sun climbs high, and while the fields still lie quiet, another sound joins the waking village, the slow, heavy turning of a water wheel. At first it is only a soft creak and splash, but soon it becomes a steady rhythm, wooden paddles dipping into the mill stream and lifting out with a slap of water. Where the road bends toward the river or a small diverted channel, there stands the mill low and wide, its roof mossy, its walls smelling of grain and damp wood. It is here that the village's harvest becomes bread, and it is here that stories gather like chaff on the floor. The mill is more than a building. It is an engine that powers the lives of farmers, bakers, brewers, and hungry families. Without it, grain must be crushed by hand with stone querns, a weary, slow business. With it, a single wheel and a clever arrangement of gears to grind in an hour what would have taken days of back-breaking labor. The miller, keeper of this noisy, turning heart, holds a quiet authority in the community. The day begins with water. Long before the first farmer arrives, the miller steps outside to inspect the mill race channel that brings a portion of the river to his wheel. He walks the banks in dawn light, listening for leaks or blockages. Fallen branches or night-washed debris can choke the flow. If water is low, he adjusts small gates to trap enough for steady turning. A mill without water is a giant at rest. Inside, the air smells of damp grain and old wood. Beams are dark with age, and flour dust lies on every ledge. Rats skitter unseen in corners. Though cats keep numbers down, the great water wheel creaks into life as the miller opens sluice gates. Paddles catch current, and slowly the wheel begins to revolve. Its motion travels through the wall to a complicated wooden gear train, a main shaft, cogs, and lantern gears that rise to the millstones above. The stones themselves are enormous, each a flat round of dressed granite, one fixed and one turning, their faces carved with careful grooves that shear and crush the kernels into meal. The miller's first job is to dress the stones if needed. Over weeks of grinding, their patterns wear smooth, dull stones crush poorly, heating grain and spoiling flour. Dressed stones cut clean and cool. The miller kneels with iron pick and slowly chips new furrows, a rhythmic tapping like a woodpecker's song. It is dusty work, but essential, and a good miller knows how to keep his stones true and flat. Soon the first customers arrive, sacks slung over shoulders or balanced on carts. Farmers greet the miller with cautious courtesy. His toll for grinding, often a 16th part of the flour, is required by law or custom. Some grumble at the cut, but few dare quarrel openly. The mill is too important, and the lord of the manor usually protects his miller, for the toll is often shared with the estate. Still, the miller must keep trust. If he cheats, taking more than his share or weighing unfairly, the whole village will know, and tempers can flare. A young boy may come first, sent by mother with a single small sack for family bread. He waits while miller hoists it up, pours grain slowly into the hopper above the stones. The boy listens, wide-eyed, as the stones begin their deep humming grind. Flour dust drifts like fine snow, coating hair and lashes. The miller chats as he works, asking after family or telling bits of news, an accident on road, a fair coming soon, the birth of a neighbor's child. Then come heavier loads, great carts from wealthier farmers, perhaps even from the manor. Horses stamp and blow while men wrestle sacks inside. The mill fills with voices and shifting weight. As the wheel turns and stones rumble, a warm vibration runs through the floor, and the whole room feels alive, powered by the steady rush of water just outside. The work is it without danger. Millstones must never run empty. Without grain between them, they strike fire from one another and can crack. The water flow must be watched. Sudden surges to spin wheel too fast and shatter gears. Belts and shafts snap. Fingers caught in moving parts are lost in an instant. Flour dust, so gentle in air, can flare explosively if spark and stillness combine. A wise miller keeps alert and teaches any helper the same careful respect. Some mills have an apprentice or son who learns as he labors. He cleans, bags flour, patches sluice gates, oils gears, and above all, listens to the tone of turning stones, the change in hum that means grain has run low, the way the wheel's splash shifts if debris catches. A good apprentice becomes an heir. A careless one courts ruin. The mill is also a social place. Farmers waiting their turn sit on benches, drink ale or cider brought along, and talk. They exchange gossip about crops, marriages, weather. Sometimes they sing to pass ein, sometimes arguments spark whose grain was cut first, whose oxes blocked the lane. The miller keeps a cautious ear, quick to pour oil on anger, for fights are bad for business and reputation. Yet he also serves as informal judge at times, helping settle disputes with his authority and neutrality. Beyond grain, the mill may turn for other work. Some villages grind not only wheat, but barley, rye, oats, even beans. In regions with flax or hemp, the wheel may power simple fulling to clean and thicken cloth, or pound bark for tanning leather. A versatile mill is a sign of wealth. Water power drive hammers, saws, or presses, but always the heart is flour daily bread of all. The miller's house, usually attached, hums with its own life. His wife may bake bread from tall flour, selling loaves to neighbors. Children grow up amid splash and rumble, learning early to avoid gears and respect water's force. Cats and dogs wander freely. Ducks float where sluice meets pond. In winter, the mill becomes warm refuge. In summer, its damp coolness is relief from heat. Travelers sometimes shelter nearby, drawn by sound and safety. Seasons change the mill song. In spring, the stream runs fast with meltwater, and wheel turns strong. Summer will bring drought, slowing work. Miller wakes at night to adjust gates, conserving every drop. Autumn is busiest, when harvest crowds the yard with carts. Farmers wait long hours, playing dice on sacks while mist rises from river. Winter slows as fields sleep, yet mill still runs steady to feed the village. Snow muffles wheels creak, but smoke curls warmly from chimney, and light glows inviting against white banks. Though humble, the miller's position is powerful and sometimes resented. is told to feel heavy when harvest is poor. Stories of greedy millers who cheat abound in tavern tales. Some lords deliberately keep miller a little feared to ensure payment. Yet a wise miller tempers power with fairness, lending small grain to hungry neighbor, keeping scales honest, offering kind word. Over years, such a man earns deep if quiet respect. Faith, too, touches the mill. Many a miller keeps a saint's image nailed above door, often St. Arnulf or St. Nicholas. On feast days he may scatter first handful of flour as blessing. Some believe the steady water and turning wheel have protective virtue. Charms hang to guard against fire or flood. When drought lingers, villagers may pray at nearby shrine, asking saints to send rain and set wheel turning again. By late afternoon, the rush slows. Farmers collect flour, lifting lighter sacks now soft and pale. Mill floor lies thick with fine dust. Air glows golden in slanting light. The wheel still turns, but slower. Gates are closed bit by bit to rest the stream. Cats curl on warm flour bags, and the miller, face white with powder, counts his toll portion. He sweeps, oils gears, and listens to the last steady trickle of water. Evening settles gently. The miller walks the mill race once more, closing sluice to let river reclaim its full course. Frog song begins along banks. From his doorway he watches twilight gather while wheel drips and stills. Tomorrow it will all start again. Water harnessed, grain crushed, bread made possible. For travelers, the sight of a mill signals safety. It means crops, bread, steady life. For villagers, its rumble is background music to existence, a sign of prosperity and continuity. In Chronicles of Kings and Knights, mills rarely earn a line, yet without them no army marches, no household eats, no brewer ferments ale. So if you wander through a medieval countryside, pause where road meets water and listen. Hear the slow creak and splash, smell flour and damp wood. Inside, a man and his helpers labor among gears and grain, turning harvest into sustenance. This is the miller's wheel, unassuming, vital, steady as the river itself. In the heart of many medieval villages, there is a house unlike the others. Its yard is stacked with barrels and buckets. Its door stands half open to let out sweet, warm steam. The smell that drifts across the lane is unmistakable. Grain toasting, herbs steeping, something rich and alive. This is the brew house, and the person who keeps its fire is the village brewer. Ale is more than a pleasant drink. It is safer than much of the water, a daily nourishment, a quiet medicine, and a comfort at day's end. Children sip weak ale, laborers quench thirst after harvest, travelers find cheer in a mug, priests bless feasts with stronger brew. Behind this simple drink lies steady work and quiet knowledge, most often kept by women, though in towns men and guilds grow powerful in the trade. The brewer's day begins early, often before the sun crests the fields. She moves through the cool dawn to her hearth, where last night's embers may still glow. She stirs them to life or builds a fresh fire, feeding it with dry faggots and oak logs until the big copper kettle can be set to warm. Beside the fire stand sacks of malted barley, sweet with a scent like toasted bread. Malting itself is a small craft, barley soaked, spread to sprout just enough to unlock sweetness, then dried on heated floor until golden. Some brewers malt their own grain, raking and turning it for days. Others buy from maltsters who specialize in the work. Water is fetched while the fire roars. In villages blessed with clear spring, the brewer may simply draw from well. In others she hauls buckets from stream or mill race, careful to choose the cleanest source. Water shapes ale's taste. A wise brewer knows which nearby spring gives soft sweetness and which can turn bitter. The first great task is mashing. She fills a large wooden mash tun with malt and hot water, stirring slowly with a long paddle. Steam rises, the smell of sweet grain fills the room, heavy and comforting. Temperature matters. Too cool and starch stays locked. Too hot and the grain scalds. There is no thermometer here, only years of practice, the feel of warm liquid on wrist, the sound of grain thickening just so. She stirs until every kernel is bathed, then covers the tun to rest. During this hour or more, enzymes quietly turn starch to sugar. While mash sweetens, the brewer tends to other chores. Buckets are scrubbed clean, jugs are checked for cracks, barrels are swelled with water so their staves hold tight. Cats prowl to keep mice from grain, dogs stretch near the hearth. Children, if she has them, run errands, splitting wood, gathering herbs, fetching more water. In some homes, the whole household joins the brewing. In others, hired helpers lend strong arms for lifting and hauling. When the mash has rested enough, the brewer draws off wort, the sweet liquid now hidden in grain. She lifts a plug at the tun's base, catching the first runnings in pails. More hot water is gently poured over grain to wash out remaining sugar, a careful act known to every experienced hand. The combined wort flows into the great copper kettle. Its color glows golden brown in firelight. Its smell is rich and inviting. Now comes the boil, the roaring heart of brewing. As the wort rolls and steams, foam rises. The brewer skims with quick strokes, then adds flavorings. In much of early medieval Europe, this means a mix called gruit, an herbal blend that might include bog myrtle, yarrow, rosemary, sweet gale, or mugwort. Each brewer has her own recipe, often secret and fiercely guarded. Herbs bring bitterness, preserve ale from souring, and sometimes lend gentle medicine. In later centuries, hops begin to appear, little green cones from vines, resinous and pleasantly bitter. They keep ale fresh longer, perfect for trade. A forward-thinking brewer might pay dearly for a small bag to experiment, knowing hopped ale could last weeks instead of days. The kettle boils for an hour or more. The smell escapes into the lane, sweet, bready, laced with herbs or hops. Neighbors passing by know at once what day it is. Some pause to chat, leaning in doorway. Children beg for a sip of the warm, sweet liquid. The brewer may offer a taste from ladle, laughing at sticky faces. Once boiling is done, the wort must cool. In winter, this is easy. Tubs set outside under clean cloth, chill in crisp air. In summer, cooling is trickier. Some brewers sink tubs in shaded stream or pack wet cloth around them. A patient eye is needed. Pitching yeast into wort too hot will kill it, too cold and it sleeps. Fermentation begins when yeast is added. Medieval brewers often rely on wild yeasts lingering in casks or caught from air. Some keep special starter, a lump of yeast-rich dough, or a scoop of frothy ale saved from last brew. As soon as yeast meets sweet wort, bubbles rise and foam blooms. The room fills with faint hiss and smell of baking bread. The brewer watches closely. Temperature, cleanliness, and timing all shape flavor and strength. Days pass with gentle tending. Each morning she checks the frothing surface, skimming scum, whispering a quick prayer perhaps. Many believe charms help, a sprig of blessed herbs above cask, a whispered saint's name. A sudden change, silence when there should be foam, sour tang in place of sweetness, can mean disaster. Grain is dear, a spoiled batch is heavy loss. Every brewer knows the dread of lifting lid and finding her work turned to vinegar. While Allah ferments, the brewhouse becomes a small social hub. Neighbors stop by to ask when the next batch will be ready. A tavern keeper might strike a bargain for 2 fresh barrels. Farmers linger to sip older brew and share gossip. Who married, whose cow calved, whether the Lord plans new taxes. Children fetch warm mugs of thin ale for thirsty parents working fields. For some, the brewhouse feels like hearth and inn combined. When fermentation slows and bubbles fade, the brewer transfers ale to clean casks. Barrels are heavy. Helpers roll and tilt them with care. Bungholes are stopped with wooden plugs. Each cask may be marked with chalk or simple symbols to show strength and age. Some ale will be drunk, mild and young, still slightly sweet. Stronger brews for feast or sale may be left to settle longer in cool cellars or shaded rooms. The economy of ale is complex. Many brewers sell by jug directly from the door. Others supply taverns. Payment may be coin, but often is barter. Flour, eggs, meat, or labor. In some places, the lord or monastery claims a right to brew or tax. In towns, brewing guilds enforce quality and protect members. They may appoint ale tasters, officials who visit to judge taste, strength, and honesty of measure. A failed test to bring fines or ruin reputation, so care and cleanliness matter deeply. Work is constant and physical. Stirring mash is heavy, lifting scalding kettles, risks burns, hauling casks, strains back and shoulders. Yet many brewers manage while tending children and house. Brewing fits into the rhythm of domestic life. A fire kept hot while meals cook, a batch fermenting as laundry dries, barrels tapped while guests arrive. There is also seasonal rhythm. Winter favors strong, dark ales that keep well and warm bellies. Spring may bring lighter brews with fresh herbs. In summer heat, brewing is harder. Cooling is tricky. Spoilage more common. Autumn after harvest is busy, when grain is plentiful and families brew to last through cold months. Festivals and saints' days dot the year, each calling for special batches. Spiced ale for Christmas, honeyed brew for weddings, strong drink for harvest home. Faith mingles with the craft. Some brewers dedicate first pour to saints, often St. Arnold, St. Bridget, or St. Nicholas. Charms and prayers are common. A cross scratched on mash tun, holy water sprinkled on first cask. Brewing feels like alchemy, invisible forces turning sweet grain to living drink. In a world of mysteries, a bubbling vat seems proof that unseen life thrives and blesses. Stories gather here too. A traveler once arrived near dusk, weary and cold. The brewer gave him warm mug in bed by hearth, and later learned he was a wandering minstrel who repaid her with songs. Another time, a whole batch soured after a thunderstorm. Folk said lightning angered the spirits. The brewer rebuilt hearth and started anew. Once a feast nearly failed when a noble wedding drained every cask. Neighbors rallied, sharing ale so no guest went dry. These small tales echo long after, retold whenever mugs are raised. Evenings in the brewhouse are warm and fragrant. The brewer sits weary but content, hands smelling of malt and herbs, hair damp from steam. Children sleep nearby, cats curl by fire. Outside, night sounds rise, frogs, distant dogs, perhaps the creak of the mill wheel. From tavern or cottage comes laughter, where her ale is already poured. Her day's work nourishes joy as much as thirst. Though chronicles praise kings with wine cups, it is ale that sustains the common world. It feeds harvesters, travelers, craftsmen. It comforts sickness and celebrates love. Behind it is quiet labor, a woman stirring mash before dawn, guarding fermentation through nights of prayer and watchfulness. Her brew keeps the village alive. So when you think of the Middle Ages, picture this humble place, a timbered house with smoke and steam, barrels lined like silent sentinels, and within it a brewer tending the mysterious work of grain, water, and tarn. Each mug poured carries warmth of hearth and steady care, a daily miracle made simple. The narrow lane smells of leather and damp earth, shaded by crooked eaves that lean toward one another like gossiping neighbors. A lantern hangs above a low door marked with a wooden boot, its paint faded but still clear enough to guide anyone seeking new soles or sturdy shoes. Inside, the cobbler's shop is a quiet refuge from the busy street. The air is warm with the scent of tanned hide, beeswax, and the faint smoke of a small brazier kept glowing for softening glue. Benches line the walls, each scarred by years of careful work. Awls and knives, hammers and tiny nails lie neatly in their places, though the tools are worn smooth by long hands. Strips of leather hang from pegs, some dyed black or brown, others left pale and waiting for the craftsman's hand. Boots in various states of repair stand ready on shelves, some with split soles, others needing only a fresh polish before they return to their masters. The cobbler himself, a man with a graying beard and patient eyes, sits bent over a last, a wooden form shaped like a foot. He threads a needle with waxed linen, pulling it through a supple upper that he is stitching to a sturdy sole. His fingers are scarred but nimble. Each pull is firm, sure, and rhythmic, like the quiet ticking of a clock. Now and then he hums under his breath, a tune so low it's nearly lost under the scrape of leather and the sigh of the fire. Beside him, an apprentice sorts tacks into small bowls. The boy's hands are not yet sure, and sometimes a tack spills and rolls across the floor, but he is quick to retrieve it before the master notices. He wears an apron too big for him, its hem nearly touching the ground. When the cobbler calls for thread or glue, the boy hurries to fetch it, eager to please, but still learning the calm pace of the trade. Outside, the lane echoes with distant market cries and the clatter of carts over cobbles, but here time seems slower. The cobbler's craft does not rush. It requires patience. Each shoe must be measured, cut, soaked, shaped, and sewn with care. A hurried stitch might loosen in the first rain, and a careless cut could waste dear leather. The master knows this and passes it on to his apprentice with each task. On a shelf near the window sits a row of lasts of many sizes, narrow ones for ladies' slippers, wide ones for farmers' boots, even a tiny one for a baby's first shoes. Each bears marks of use, scratches, stains, initials carved into the wood long ago. Some belong to customers who have long since passed, yet the cobbler keeps them out of respect, and because one never knows when a grandchild may come seeking the same fit as a grandfather. The day's first customer arrives, a miller, his hands dusted with flour, carrying a pair of boots so caked with mud they seem more earth than leather. He sets them down with a sigh and asks for new soles, for the roads to the mill have worn the old ones thin. The cobbler nods, turning each boot over to inspect the damage. He does not hurry his verdict. He traces the seams, presses the heel, and finally names his price with gentle certainty. The miller nods and leaves the boots behind, his step lighter as he goes. Next comes a merchant's wife with a small bundle wrapped in linen. She unwraps a pair of delicate shoes, their ribbons frayed and their toes scuffed from many dances. She asks if they can be made fine again, for a feast approaches, and she has no wish to appear shabby. The cobbler smiles and says he can mend them well enough to make them shine like new. She seems relieved and lingers a moment to admire the workshop's calm before stepping back into the busy street. The apprentice eyes the merchant's shoes with interest. They are lighter than the heavy boots he usually sees, their soles thin and supple. The master uses this chance to teach how to work with delicate hides, how to stitch without puckering the leather, how to choose the right wax for polish. The boy listens, nodding, though his fingers still fumble when he tries to copy the master's precise motions. Midday brings a brief pause. The cobbler eats a simple meal of bread and cheese, washing it down with a cup of watered ale. The apprentice sits nearby, swinging his legs as he chews, his face smudged with glue. They speak little, but share a quiet contentment, the sound of the town drifting in through the window, bells, laughter, a hawker's call. Work resumes when the meal is done, unhurried but steady. In the afternoon, the door creaks open to admit a young knight squire, bearing his master's riding boots. They are elegant, but worn at the stirrup and spattered with mud from the road. The squire bows awkwardly and explains that his lord expects to ride again soon. The cobbler studies the boots and assures the boy they can be ready by dawn. The squire thanks him profusely, relief softening his nervous posture. The master chooses a supple but strong leather for the knight's boots. He cuts with long, sure strokes, the blade whispering through the hide. The apprentice watches closely, seeing how each cut wastes nothing. Scraps are saved for patches and straps. Be the smallest pieces have use. The smell of fresh-cut leather fills the room rich and warm, mingling with the faint smoke of the brazier. Outside, rain begins to patter on the street. The workshop grows cozier, its single lantern throwing a golden light over the benches. The cobbler does not pause, though he glances once toward the window to watch drops chase each other down the glass. Rain is good for business, he thinks. Wet roads wear boots thin and send more folk his way. He smiles faintly and keeps stitching. An older man arrives, leaning on a stick and carrying a pair of shoes that have seen better days. He greets the cobbler like an old friend, for they have known each other many years. The shoes, though cracked and faded, fit the man's feet like no other, and he begs that they mended one more tie. The cobbler agrees, his voice gentle. He knows some shoes carry more than feet. They carry memory. The apprentice helps by cutting new insoles guided by the master's steady words. It is delicate work, for the old shoes are fragile, and the boy's hands tremble slightly. The cobbler places a reassuring hand on his shoulder, reminding him that care matters more than speed. Together they bring the shoes back to quiet dignity, their cracks eased, their souls strong again. The old man leaves smiling, his step more certain than when he arrived. Later, as dusk nears, the cobbler polishes a finished pair of boots until they gleam softly in the fading light. He rubs wax in small circles, his eyes half closed, his thoughts perhaps on the many roads these boots will tread. The apprentice sweeps the floor, gathering curls of leather and stray tacks. The sound of the broom is soft and steady, mingling with the distant toll of evening bells. When work is done, the master sets aside his tools with quiet reverence. He wipes each blade and awl before returning it to its place. The brazier is banked, its coals glowing faintly. A last look around the shop shows order restored, though the scent of leather lingers like a promise of tomorrow's craft. Outside, the lane is darkening, lanterns flickering to life along its length. The cobbler locks the door and places the day's coins into a small chest. The apprentice follows, yawning but proud of the work they've done. Together they step into the cool evening air, their shoulders easy, their pace unhurried. The shop will sleep now, quiet under its painted sign. Tomorrow it will wake again to the sound of awls and hammers, the soft rasp of leather on wood, the murmured lessons between master and boy. For in this place, patience and skill are treasures more lasting than gold, and every pair of shoes carries the steady heartbeat of a craft well loved. In every medieval settlement, large or small, one smell told of comfort and daily life more than any other, the warm, nutty scent of fresh bread. It drifted across lanes and fields each morning, rising from the village bakehouse, a humble but vital heart where grain became food and neighbors met before the day's work began. Many cottages had small hearths, but few could afford the wood or skill to bake well. Most relied on the communal oven, tended by a baker who knew fire as well as any smith knew iron. Often the bakehouse stood near green or market, a sturdy building of stone or brick to withstand heat. Its great oven, dome-shaped and deep, was built of clay or brick, heated first with blazing logs until walls glowed and embers turned white. Then coals were swept aside, and dough slid into shimmering heat on long-handled peel. Before dawn, the baker was awake. He fed the fire, judging temperature by hand and eye. A sprinkle of flour that browned just so told him oven ready. Around him waited troughs of dough, coarse rye or barley for poor, wheat if harvest was kind or family wealthy. Dough was heavy, dark with bran, sometimes flavored with herbs, onion, or bits of lard. He kneaded with strong arms, sweat mixing with flour dust, and shaped loaves marked by small cuts or family signs. Villagers arrived early, baskets on hips, each with lump of dough mixed at home. Some women came still yawning, babies bundled against chill. Boys carried sacks of coarse grain to be ground by nearby mill. The bakehouse buzzed with greetings and gossip, news of weather, births, harvest, and trouble. As Baker raked embers and nodded, each person slid dough inside or paid him to do so, trusting his skill with fire. For those without fuel, the shared oven was blessing. Wood cost dear, and smoke laws sometimes forbade too many household fires. Communal baking saved fuel and kept bread steady for whole hamlet. It was also a place of meeting. Strangers learned names. Children played while parents waited. Midwives and reeves shared news here. Even small deals struck as loaves baked. Inside the bakehouse, air grew hot and fragrant, walls darkened with soot, light slanted through high, small window, coals hissed when water spilled. The baker, face ruddy, moved with practiced rhythm, peel loaves in, sweep ash, close heavy wooden door, tying each batch by sun or sense. No clock but his trained instinct, he knew when crust ready, by smell alone. Payment came in coins, or sometimes bread itself. Baker might keep one loaf for every dozen, or charge fee called ovenright owed to lord. In some manors, peasants required to use lord's oven and pay portion, the banal ovenright adding to village economy. Despite grumbles, this kept oven maintained and safe. Loaves emerged golden or dark, crackling as they cooled on racks. Simple rounds for poor, pletted or scored for feast days, rich manchet bread white and fine for lordly table. Children waited eager for crust ends. Workers grabbed warm loaf to eat with cheese in field. Feast days meant spiced buns, honeyed rolls, or breads shaped as animals or saints. Bread was more than food, it was life. Harvest failure meant hunger and unrest. Full granaries meant peace. A baker who cheated on weight or flour risked heavy fine or public shame. Markets tested loaves for fairness. Priests blessed first bread of new grain. Bread also served as plate, trencher under stew or meat, eaten after juices soaked in. Seasoned flavored baking. Winter loaves were dense and dark, mixed with peas or beans to stretch flour. Spring brought first fresh grains milled after fasting, joyful lighter bread for Easter. Summer gave plenty, but also risk of fire, bakers careful with dry timbers. Autumn smelled of new harvest, barns full, ovens busy from dawn to dusk. Stories and songs surrounded bakehouse. Children sang rhymes about bold bakers. Legends told of saint saving bread from burning, or devil stealing loaf left unblessed. In some villages, unmarried girls peeking into oven on special feast might glimpse future husband's shadow. Simple superstitions tied daily bread to luck and love. Not all was peaceful. Sometimes quarrels flared, accusations of underbaking, stealing heat, or skipping fee. Baker wielded wooden peel like staff to keep order, but most days passed in warmth and laughter, punctuated by hiss of steam and thud of peel. Evenings, when work done, Baker banked coals, cleaned floor, and perhaps baked small cakes for his own family. His hands always flour-dusted, shoulders strong from kneading. He lived modest but respected. Few trades touched every stomach daily. Travelers loved village bakehouses too. Smell drew them in. A coin-bought warm loaf, comfort on road. Pilgrims carried bread blessed at shrines. Soldiers filled packs with hard biscuit that kept weeks. In towns, bakers' guilds held power. In villages, single baker was vital friend. At night, the oven cooled slowly, radiating gentle heat. Cats curled near, last light faded. Tomorrow would begin again before dawn, with flour and fire and quiet service that fed whole community. So when you imagine medieval food, think first of this place, smoky, fragrant, full of talk and patience. The village bakehouse kept hunger at bay and hearts connected, loaf by loaf, day after long day. Before dawn has fully shaken the night from its wings, a faint sound moves across the open field. The slow creak of wood, the soft clink of chains, the low mutter of men coaxing beasts to their task. It is spring, and the plow season has come. The village wakes to soil and sky, for this is the work that will feed them through the year ahead. A medieval farm is it a single neat square of land. It is a patchwork of open fields, long strips divided among families, their borders marked by faint ridges or scattered stones. Beyond lie meadows, woods for fuel and pigs, and the Lord's own demesne where tenants owe labor. In spring the land lies damp from thaw and rain. Mists rise in hollows, blackbirds sing sharp and sweet. The plow itself is a marvel of sturdy simplicity, a heavy wooden frame with an iron coulter to slice the sod, and a mold board to turn it. Two long handles allow the plowman to guide its bite. Chains run to a team of oxen, slow, patient, immensely strong. Wealthier farms may use horses, quicker but costlier to feed. Each beast wears a padded yoke. Bells may jingle softly on collars to warn folk as they pass. Men and boys walk beside, one steadying the plow, another urging beasts with goad or voice. "Ho! Girt up!" called the plowman, leaning his weight to steer straight furrow. Earth peels back dark and moist, alive with worms. The smell is deep and good, promise of grain to come. Women and children follow, breaking clods with hoes, scattering seed of beans or peas where early planting suits, and singing to keep pie. Before work begins, the field itself is blessed. The priest, or sometimes the eldest villager, walks its edge, sprinkling holy water, murmuring prayer for fair weather and good yield. Crosses cut in soil-marked turning points. Old customs linger too, bits of bread buried at boundary, charms hung to keep birds at bay. Faith and superstition walk hand in hand here. Neither feels strange to those who live by the soil. The day stretches long. Plowing is slow. A man and oxes may cover only an acre in a day, less if ground is heavy with clay or tangled with roots. Mud cakes boots, shoulders ache, but there is rhythm. Step, creak, snort of beasts, slice and turn of earth. Children run errands for water or food, scampering back with baskets of rye bread, cheese, and ale. Dogs nose along furrows, chasing mice. Above, skylarks wheel and pour song. Villagers work together, Strips lie side by side, so cousins and neighbors plow in sight of one another, lending hands if a team falters. The poor who own no oxe may borrow or join in shared teams, paying with labor. Women sow behind plows, casting seed in careful arc. Others mend harness or carry fodder. A stuck plow draws laughter and swift help. A broken beam is mended with spare wood kept for just such need. Farming is solitary only in dream. In truth, it is a braid of many lives. The land itself teaches patience. Stones rise with frost, roots tangle, rain may turn clay to sucking mire. Each obstacle is met with muttered prayer or wry curse. Yet there is quiet pride in straight furrows glinting under morning sun. When the plow reaches field's end and turns, men wipe brows, drink from shared flask, and gauge sky for weather. A crow caws, someone jokes it's calling for seed. Work goes on. By midday, families pause for dinner in the field. They sit on turned sod or low banks, unwrap cloth bundles, coarse bread, onions, hard cheese, maybe bit of salted pork or dried herring. Ale or small beer cools thirst. Talk is simple about soil and beasts, gossip of neighbors, news from manor. Laughter rises, mixing with skylark's trill and glee of tethered sheep on meadow edge. Children nap or play while elders stretch weary backs. Then with sighs they return to furrow. Tools are few but precious. Plowshare and coulter kept sharp, hoe handles rubbed smooth, seed bags patched and sturdy. The village smith repairs iron edges when dull or broken. Wheelwright mend carts hauling seed and manure. Each craft supports this season, and each farmer thanks them with coin, labor, or part of harvest come autumn. The whole economy beats to plowing's slow drum. Evening brings weary joy. Last furrow turned, beasts led home to byre and fed nosebags of grain. Men scrape mud from boots and laugh softly at bent backs and blistered hands. Women gather tools and children. Sometimes a small prayer said at field's edge. Sometimes a jest tossed skyward, half thanks, half challenge to fickle weather. Smoke curls from cottages as suppers begin. Pottage thick with barley, bread hot from hearth, a mug of ale to soothe sore muscles. Spring plowing is more than task. It is ritual of renewal. After winter's hunger and dark, to break earth is to wake hope. Villagers watch sky close, feel every wind, know that grain planted now will decide whether next February brings plenty or gnawing want. Yet they sing, joke, and keep faith, for they have done this all their lives and their fathers' lives before. Beyond labor, plowing weaves social bond. Shared teams breed trust. Neighbors know one another's strength and need. A widow may see her strip plowed by men of village in quiet charity. An injured farmer may have sons of others walk his furrows. No charter compels this, hunger and human decency do. It is how community survives fickle season. And there is beauty, too. Dawn light catches, turns soil in bronze and gold. Rooks follow, snapping worms from furrow's edge. Children chase one another over ridges. Women laugh under kerchiefs bright with dye. Bells from distant church drift on damp air. The smell, sharp, sweet, living, is first true scent of spring. When night falls, fields lie newly marked in long, dark lines. silent but full of promise. Stars prick above, a dog barks once and quiets. In cottages farmers sleep heavy, dreaming perhaps of harvest yellow and full. The plow waits outside under lean-to or in barn, its blade still smeared with black soil, patient for tomorrow's work. So when you think of medieval life, remember but only castle walls or crowded towns. Remember the plow and the spring fields, humble wood and iron guided by calloused hands, oxes slow and sure, earth opening to seed under watch of sky and prayer. Here begins the bread that feeds every hall and hearth. Here begins the year's hope. At last the long hope of the year stands before them, fields gone gold and heavy, heads of grain bent as if in prayer. The harvest has come. All summer the village watched sky and wind, checked kernels between teeth, counted days since bloom. Now every hand, old and young, is called to the stubble. Dawn finds the lanes already alive with voices, the smell of dew and straw, the soft clatter of tools. The reapers gather with sickles and some with scythes. The sickle is older, a short crescent blade, good for careful cutting near ground, used by women and men alike in tight-knit crews. The scythe, longer and swifter, swings in arcs that lay swathes clean, but it demands strength, rhythm, and a clear strip ahead. A stone hung at the belt keeps edges keen. A whisper of wet grit against metal carries down the furrows like a cricket's song. Teams form at the field's margin. The lord's demesne takes precedence. Tenants owe days here before tending their own strips. The reeve marks out work, checks that boundary stones stand, counts heads. Laughter flashes even now, a joke about last year's crooked ridge, a boast of who cuts straightest, and then the first stalks fall. The air fills with the low rasp of blades through straw, the soft thump of tied sheaves set upright to dry. Cutting follows a steady pattern. Reapers move ahead, slicing in close ranks, their backs shining with sweat by mid-morning. Behind them binders gather fallen stalks, twist wisps into ropes, and tie sheaves tight enough to stand. Children run between stooks with armfuls of straw for binding, or chase mice flushed from cover, or carry water from a barrel shaded by a cart. Old folk glean in the wake, picking up heads missed by haste, murmuring thanks for each full palm. Songs help the hours pass. Some are work chants measured to the swing of a scythe, some are merry harvest tunes, with verses that everyone knows and verses invented on the spot. A line begun in one corner of field is caught up half a furlong away, changed by another crew and sent back with a laugh. The birds answer too, larks and finches greedy for grain, and boys clap and shout to drive them off. Heat rises, shirts are unlaced, kerchiefs tied tighter against hair and dust. The ale break is blessed. A keg tapped at the field edge, cups dipped and passed. Along with ale comes coarse bread, onions, bits of cheese or bacon if a household to spare it. They sit in the scant shade of a hedge or cart, looking out over what has fallen and what remains. Pride pricks them more than hunger. The work behind looks small, the work ahead vast, and yet the day's tie feels friendly now that sweat has begun to pay the year's debts. Harvest is urgent for good reason. A storm can lay whole fields flat, making cutting slow and rotting heads before they dry. Too long a delay, and the grains fall when touched, leaving only empty whiskers. Everyone watches the edge of sky. A cloud bank means quicker hands, shorter breaks, perhaps lanterns later. In some seasons, bells ring from church to call more bodies when weather threatens, and even the priest throws his cloak aside to bind sheaves. Custom keeps order. On the Lord's land, the first sheaf belongs to chapel. It is carried to the altar with a short prayer for the rest to come safely. On tenant strips, neighbor helps neighbor. Debts are remembered but also forgiven in these bright weeks. Widows and the poor have the right of gleaning what the sickle drops or the binder misses. They may gather without shame. Children learn this law as they learn to walk. Greed is frowned upon, but so is grudging. Fields feed all or none. By late day the stubble shimmers, and stooks stand like little huts. Their tied sheaves lean together so rain will run off. The smell of warm straw and sap fills the lanes as carts creak toward barns. Wheels sink in soft places. Oxes snort. Men shoulder sheaves when ruts grow deep. The barn doors yawn, darkness inside swallows the day's brightness and keeps it safe. There the harvest will finish its journey from stalk to bread. When the cutting is done for a strip, another rhythm takes the floor, the threshing. On the barn's packed earth threshing floor, men and women stand in two lines and swing flails, long wooden staves jointed with leather, batten down, beating sheaves until grain spills like startled hail. The sound is like restrained thunder, a measured drumming that sets feet tapping even when backs complain. Dust whirls in sunbeams falling from high slits. The smell is sweet and dry. Chaff clings to hair and lashes. Next comes winnowing. On a windy day or with fans woven of willow when air is still, the mixture of grain and chaff is tossed from baskets. Light husk blows aside. Heavy kernels fall bright into waiting cloths. Children love this work. Laughter rides the chaff like thistledown. Cats prowl, hens dart hopeful for stray grains. By the end of the day, sacks stand full and satisfying, tied stout and labeled by chalk marks or a family sign. From sacks to measure is close step. The Lord's tithe is set aside, the priest's portion taken, rents for mill or manor reckoned. There is pride and there is pinch. Some years the pile answers every levy and still leaves plenty for winter. Other years the little mountain shrinks as dues are met until a mother's brow gathers despite her careful count. The reeve, if he is wise and honest, looks long at such faces and scratches a private note to move a measure from full bin to thin without making noise of it. Much of the grain cannot be eaten yet. It must go to mill to be ground under millstones, patient thunder. Carts roll to the watermill, the wheels splashing like a merry drummer who never tires, or to the windmill, its white sails turning in a sky washed high and blue. The miller weighs toll, mutters at damp that makes flour clump, boasts of how fine his stones grind since he reset them. Women wait talking in small knots, babies at breast, teenagers trading glances, elders telling how it was in the year the river ran dry. From this powder will come porridge, bread, and ale, the village's daily strength. Harvest touches every craft. The cooper's yard is full, new barrels bound for ale and grain. The smith sharpens scythe, mend wheel bands snapped under too much weight. The brewer has soaked malt since Lammas. Soon the brewhouse will steam like a low cloud, hops and sweetness twining along the lane. In kitchens, ovens heat from dawn. Loaves pile on boards, pies stuffed with early apples show up as treats for aching crews. The whole village is one machine, and in harvest it runs loud and smooth. Faith laces the work. At Lammas loaf mass, the first new bread is carried to the altar. The priest blesses it, and a wedge is shared among those who brought the sheaf. Later, near Michaelmas, with most safely in, thanks take on bolder cheer. The churchyard fills with voices, and children carry little posies made of grain heads and flowers to lay before the archangel's image. Superstitions pad alongside, a last patch of standing grain left for the field spirit, so he will not follow them home. A little corn figure woven and hung in the rafters to keep luck through winter. All this work ends in harvest home, the feast that loosens belts and tongues. It is usually held when the Lord's granaries are sealed, and the tenants' barns full enough that sleep comes easy. A cart is decked with greenery, the last sheaf dressed with ribbons or a child's wreath rides high like a small queen. The procession winds from field edge to manor gate, to church porch, to village green, with fiddles, pipes, and drums if they be found, with hands clapping if fat. Laughter bubbles everywhere. Griefs of the year are put away for an evening. Tables groan with harvest dishes, pies heavy with meat or fish, pottages thick with peas, fresh bread whipped out of ovens still fragrant, wheels of cheese, apples and pears piled high, honey cakes, and jugs of ale lined like soldiers. The Lord may send a cask of better drink, the steward may turn soft and forgive some petty fine, the reeve may sit on a bench rather than stand like a post. The poor have seats too, their bowls filled first in some villages. Singing rises and swells, old tunes everyone knows, new verses made in mischief, psalms when the priest raises hand. Games sprout like mushrooms. Young men leap sheaves or wrestle on the green. Girls race with pails and spill less than logic says they should. Children roll on straw until they vanish like hedgehogs. An old woman tells fortunes from apple peel. A lad swears the peel spelled his beloved's name, though it looks like a snake to everyone else. Moon hangs fat and approving over it all. Speech follows drink. There are toasts to God, to the saint of the day, to the lord and lady, to the reeve reluctantly, to the midwife who saved 2 births in June, to the old man who taught half the lads to set a straight furrow. Then the floor clears for harvest dances, not elegant pavonets like a rich hall's, but circling runs and claps, stamping patterns that pound dust into stars underfoot. The fiddler saws until his arm shakes. Someone beats a drum so fiercely that geese in pens answer. For a few hours, a village that has labored like ants moves like birds instead. Later, when the lamps burn low, couples slip out to cool air and quiet lanes. The green shows only stray straw and a sleeping dog. In barns, men roll into straw as if the field had come to bed with them. The priest, who has eaten more pie than is prudent, snores faintly in his chair until a child wakes him, giggling. On some years a tale is told, always the same, always new, of the harvest when rain never came, until the women carried the statue of Mary across the field, and a cloud rose like a silver boat. No one knows if it happened here or in the next valley. It happened wherever bread was needed and faith was stubborn. Harvest is also reckoning. After feast, counting resumes how many sacks to sell at the fair, how many to keep, what portion to grind each week. Households measure hope with careful hands. A cottage with many mouths and thin bins plans to stretch porridge with peas. A family lucky with pigs promises to share lard in January when cold gnaws hardest. The widow who gleaned well hides her little bags where damp cannot find them. The reeve makes his rounds, tapping barn doors with his staff, listening to the hollow that tells him which are full. And then comes the quiet after. Fields lie shorn, patterned in pale and brown, hedges full of spiders' lace. Plows will cut again for winter sowing, cattle will graze stubble, geese glean what fell. The frantic pace eases to steady chores. In cottages women grind and bake, patch and pickle, dry apples on strings near the hearth. Men mend tools, thatch weak spots, haul faggots from copse. Children crack nuts and learn to knit. The village exhales into shorter days, trusting stacks and bins to hold through dark months. Not every year ends in plenty. There are lean ones when blight blackened barley or storm beat wheat flat. Those feasts were thinner, the songs tighter in the throat, the corn figure hung with more prayers than ribbons. Yet even then there was a feast. For hunger is fought best with company. A thin stew, eaten together, holds better than a thick one eaten alone. And no year passes without some glint, a child's quick step in the dance, a joke so perfect even the stone-faced reeve grins, a night sky pricked bright as a god's promise over the wagons. If you could stand on a small rise and look down on a harvest day, you would see tide-layered, old men cutting as their fathers did, boys learning the grab of straw on palm, girls binding in neat prow ropes, a dog skittering at birds, a priest smiling under a sun he cannot bless into being, but to thank when it shines. You would hear steel and laughter, feel chaff on skin, taste dust sweet as honey in your mouth. You would understand, perhaps, why e'en the proudest lord bows his head when the first loaf from new grain is set on his board. All the power in walls and iron means little without this gold. So remember the harvest and the feast of plenty when you picture medieval life. Remember the women with strong forearms twisting sheaves, the men with backs like bows under the scythe, the children stooping for a fallen head with glee, the barn drumming with flails, the wind lifting chaff like a blessing, the church door framed by a sheaf tied in ribbon. Remember the night after, when the village sleeps, not from despair but from joy, with bread cooling on boards and moonlight silvering the stubble. From such days the year is made bearable, from such feasts the winter learns it cannot win. By the time the first sunlight warms the thatched roofs, the quiet lanes of the village are no longer still. From every direction come the sounds of wheels on rutted earth and the shuffle of hooves. Peasants trudge beside small carts stacked with onions, apples, woven baskets, and earthenware jugs. Shepherd boys urge reluctant sheep along. Women balance baskets on their hips, the weight heavy but familiar. It is market day, and the whole countryside seems to be walking toward the heart of the settlement, the wide, open market square. The square itself is little more than a packed earth space, bordered by timbered houses and a few shops, yet on this day it feels like the center of the world. Flags or simple cloth banners may hang from windows. Sometimes the Lord Steward has raised a painted pole to mark the market's authority and protection. Early arrivals set up rough stalls, boards on barrels, blankets spread on ground, carts tipped to show wares. Smells mingle, new bread, hay, drying fish, leather, damp wool. Merchants from nearby towns or even far cities arrive on horseback or in wagons. A cloth seller unrolls bolts dyed deep blue or russet. A potter stacks glazed jugs so their colors gleam in morning light. A traveling spice dealer arranges tiny packets of pepper, cinnamon, and saffron for those who can afford their luxury. A few foreign traders appear now and then, their accents strange, their wares exotic, fine silk ribbons, bright beads, salt from distant coasts. Children stare wide-eyed at such wonders. The market bell rings, sometimes a church bell, sometimes one hung only for this purpose. Its deep note carries across fields, telling stragglers to hurry if they wish to sell early and well. By mid-morning the square is alive. Voices rise and fall, greetings, arguments over price, jokes and gossip. Dogs dart underfoot, scavenging dropped scraps. Geese honk indignantly as they are tied by the leg to stalls. Horses stamp, annoyed at noise and crowd. Food fills the air. Bakers arrive with fresh loaves still warm, crust crackling. A brewer sells jugs of small ale. A vintner offers thin local wine. Cheese sellers cut samples with wire, offering sharp or creamy tastes to tempt buyers. Butchers hang rabbits, chickens, or a quartered pig from wooden frame. Their knives flash as they cut to order. The smell is rich and not always pleasant, yet part of the day's texture. Many villagers come less to buy than to trade. Eggs for salt, flax for cheese, wool for iron nails. Barter thrives where coin is scarce. Deals are struck with handclasp and word alone. Trust runs deep in small communities. Yet merchants from away insist on silver pennies or larger coins, clinking, carefully weighed and tested by biting or ringing on table. Some buyers carry tiny scales to check the worth of gold leaf or spices. The market is also social theater. Friends meet after weeks apart. Cousins gossip while fingering cloth. Young men and women steal glances across baskets of apples. News travels faster here than anywhere. A minstrel sings of last year's war or a saint's miracle. A herald posts edict from lord about taxes or musters. Rumors of famine, plague, or strange beasts cross lips in excited whispers. For many, market day is their only window to a wider world. Children revel in sights and sounds. They chase chickens, beg for honey cakes, or stare at puppet shows set up in corners. A traveling juggler tosses bright balls. A dancing bear plods with chain rattling, and a fiddler plays reels that set feet tapping. The square smells of roasting nuts, sweetmeats, and warm hay. Laughter mixes with braying donkeys and clamor of bells. Authorities watch over all. The Lord's steward or bailiff patrols with guards to keep order, collects stall fees, and settle disputes. Scales are checked to prevent cheating, weights inspected. Sometimes a thief is caught and punished on the spot, perhaps tied to pillory by market cross as lesson to all. Yet most days pass with only stern words and small fines. Order matters. Trade depends on safety. Some markets host special fairs, larger gatherings sanctioned by royal or papal charter. Then the square swells beyond imagining. Tents, banners, distant merchants with camels or exotic animals, whole streets lined with wares. Days turn to week-long celebration with music, tournaments, and pageants. For humble villagers, these fairs are wonder and chaos, a glimpse of far-off lands and rich goods they may never afford but love to see. Market day shifts with the seasons. In spring, stalls overflow with early greens, lambs, young pigs, and wool from first shearing. Summer brings grain in sacks, fresh fruit, honey, and bright linen. Autumn is richest, apples, nuts, smoked hams, full fleeces, barrels of cider. Winter markets are quieter but smell of evergreen and roasting chestnuts. Merchants hawk candles, woolen mitts, and salted fish to last the cold months. Guilds use market to assert power. The bakers might march early to set price of bread. Weavers display their best. Butchers guard right to slaughter within town. Apprentices run errands and learn crafts' proud presence. Guild banners flutter if a feast day coincides, and masters boast quietly of work's quality. Spiritual life is close by. A church often stands just off the square. Bells call to midday mass or angelus. Pilgrims may sell badges or offer prayers for coins. Friars preach from corners, reminding shoppers of charity and salvation amid trade. Some buyers drop coins in poor box after bargaining hard, a small salve for conscience. By late afternoon, the buses slows. Bread is sold, meat gone, spices packed away. Merchants tally coins, farmers load unsold goods back onto carts. Dogs scavenge bones, children grow sleepy, and gossip winds down. A few travelers linger to drink ale and sing before heading out. Slowly the square empties until only scraps of straw and trampled mud remain, smelling of animals and spilled ale. Even in quiet, the market square feels changed. It has pulsed with life, drawn distant worlds into one place, and stitched the village more tightly to trade routes and news. Tomorrow it will return to open space for carts or children's games, but memory of voices and colors lingers. So when you picture medieval daily life, see this bustling heart, stalls bright with cloth and apples, traders calling, minstrels singing, gossip flowing like ale. The market square isn't just commerce, it is meeting place, news hall, stage of joy and survival. At the end of a long, twisting lane, where rainwater gathers in shallow puddles and the scent of wood smoke hangs low, stands a tavern with a crooked signboard. The painted mug upon it is faded, but the glow spilling from its windows is warm and inviting. Its walls are half timber and half stone, darkened by years of smoke, yet the door swings easily on its worn hinges. Travelers know it by reputation, a place where the fire burns late, the ale is steady, and the gossip of the town flows as freely as the drink. Inside, the air greets all who enter with a rush of warmth and the mingled smells of roasting meat, spiced cider, and the faint tang of old oak casks. The hearth takes pride of place, wide enough for 3 grown men to stand within. Logs hiss as they burn, flames licking high to chase away the chill. Above the mantel, herbs hang, drying sage, rosemary, thyme, adding a pleasant sharpness to the smoky air. A blackened kettle simmers on the hearthstone, steam curling lazily toward the rafters. Rough-hewn tables fill the main room, their surfaces scarred by countless tankards and dice games. Lanterns hang from beams above, their light soft and golden. Against one wall stretches a long counter where the innkeeper works. A barrel-chested man with quick eyes and a talent for remembering every face and favorite drink. He moves with easy rhythm, filling mugs from a cask, slicing bread, counting coins without missing a word of conversation. Tonight the tavern is busy but not rowdy. Farmers sit with boots stretched toward the fire, talking of weather and harvest while nursing dark ale. A pair of merchants play cards quietly in a corner, their expressions mild but their eyes sharp. Near the hearth, an old soldier leans on his staff, telling a tale of the road to anyone who will listen, his voice low and steady as a drum. A dog sleeps at his feet, twitching now and then as it dreams. In the farthest nook sits a weaver, his hands never still even at rest. He knots a cord absent-mindedly, listening to the talk around him. Beside him 2 washerwomen share a platter of cheese and dried fruit, laughing softly at a shared memory. A young apprentice from the guild hall hovers near the counter, eager for stories yet shy of speaking. The innkeeper tosses him a kindly word now and then, coaxing him to stay. The fire crackles and its light paints the low ceiling in wavering gold. Shadows move gently over the stone floor as patrons shift in their seats. The warmth seeps into boots and cloaks, drawing sighs of contentment from those who have spent the day in the damp streets. It is the sort of place where hours pass unnoticed, each moment softened by the comfort of company and a steady flame. A young maid tends the room, balancing a tray with practiced grace. She carries mugs of cider and bowls of stew, smiling easily as she weaves between benches. Now and then she pauses to hear a jest or accept a coin slipped with thanks. Her apron is clean but patched, her hair bound in a simple kerchief. Though she moves quickly, she never seems hurried, her calm presence a quiet balm. Near the hearth, the old soldier begins a new story, the one of his first winter on the road. His listeners lean closer as he speaks of snowdrifts high as a man, of wolves whose eyes glimmered in the dark, and of a lone chapel where he found shelter and bread. He does not embellish. His words are plain but carry weight. Even the merchants pause their game to listen for a while before turning back to their cards. From the kitchen comes the smell of meat turning slowly on a spit. The cook, a broad woman with a quick laugh, works unseen, but makes her presence known by the clatter of pots and the occasional song. She sings of the river and its fish, of fields in summer, of lovers waiting by the gate. Her voice is warm and untrained, but it fills the room with easy joy. The door opens with a gust of cool air, and a small group of travelers enters, stamping mud from their boots. They are road-worn, cloaks damp, cheeks flushed with cold. The innkeeper greets them with nods and a ready mug of ale each, asking softly about their journey. Soon they are settled near the fire, hands stretched to the warmth, grateful sighs escaping as heat returns to chilled fingers. One traveler, a young woman with bright eyes and a lute strapped across her back, soon proves to be a singer. At the urging of the crowd, she tunes her strings and begins a gentle song. Her voice is clear but soothing, a melody of wandering roads and quiet nights under the stars. Conversation softens around her, though no one falls fully silent. The music simply becomes another thread in the tavern's comforting tapestry. Children are rare guests here at night, but a few linger this evening, perched sleepily beside their parents. One boy curls on a bench wrapped in a cloak, eyes half shut, lulled by the hum of voices and the flicker of firelight. Another leans against his mother's side, too tired to eat the last of his bread but unwilling to leave the warmth. The innkeeper notices and brings a mug of warm milk, earning a grateful nod from the weary mother. The merchants finish their game at last, one laughing softly as he slides a small pile of coins across the table to the other. They part without rancor, both satisfied to have passed the evening in a friendly contest. The weaver sets aside his cord and accepts a drink from the soldier, thanking him for the tale. The washerwomen rise to leave, pulling their shawls tight before stepping out into the night, their laughter fading as the door swings shut behind them. Late in the night, the inn grows quieter. Only the fire keeps its lively crackle, and its light pools golden over the worn floor. The travelers doze where they sit, too weary to climb the stairs to their rented rooms just yet. The innkeeper wipes the counter with a damp cloth, humming softly. The maid stacks empty bowls and cups with care, her movements unhurried. At last the singer with the lute packs away her instrument, smiling as she counts the few coins tossed her way. She thanks the innkeeper and promises to return if the road brings her this way again. The old soldier, leaning heavier on his staff now, bids good night to those who remain and shuffles off toward the small room he lets above the kitchen. The innkeeper steps to the hearth, prodding the logs so that the fire will hold a little longer through the night. He pauses for a moment, gazing into the flames as if gathering his own quiet thoughts. Outside, the lane is dark and still, the town gone to sleep. Inside, warmth and calm linger like a deep breath held in comfort. When at last the last guest has climbed the stairs and the chairs are set upon the tables, the innkeeper banks the fire and snuffs the lanterns one by one. The great room falls into shadow, but the scent of wood smoke and roasted meat remains, mingled with the ghost of laughter and song. Tomorrow will bring new travelers, new tales, but tonight the tavern rests, wrapped in its own quiet story. Outside, night has come early. Snow lies deep on thatched roofs, and wind rattles shutters with long, low sighs. Inside the cottage, the hearth glows, red logs stacked over steady coals, iron pot hung from the crane, warmth spreading to every corner. After a day of cold fields, mending, or wood cutting, the family gathers for their winter supper, the simplest of meals, yet rich with comfort and shared life. The room is single and low, smoke-stained but warm. Rough beams overhead hang with drying herbs, apples strung in garlands, and slabs of bacon curing in cool draughts. Clay floor swept, rushes fresh with herbs for scent. By the fire stands long wooden table, well scrubbed but scarred with years of knives and bread loaves. Benches line its sides, a high-backed chair for the eldest or head of house faces hearth. Before meal begins, someone tends fire, a boy stirring embers, or the mother laying another log. Sparks flare and shadows dance on walls. Kettles sing softly, steam curling fragrant with onions, cabbage, and smoked pork. The smell fills room long before bowls appear, stirring hunger and easing the day's weariness. Cooking in winter follows the season's limits. Fresh greens are few, cabbages from pit, dried peas, beans, stored onions, and garlic form base of stew. Bits of bacon or ham bone add strength. Sometimes dried mushrooms from autumn woods give dark flavor. Bread baked days before lies ready, hard crust softened by fire's warmth. If family lucky, a crock of butter or cheese waits. If wealthier, a jug of ale or thin wine stands near. Children play near warmth, while food simmers quiet games with wooden dolls or carved animals, or just staring into flames, drowsy. Older ones help, slicing bread, fetching water from barrel kept indoors so it will not freeze. Conversation drifts, talk of weather, hopes for next market, tales of saints or family lore. Sometimes neighbors or kin join. Winter nights can be lonely. A guest brightens room, they stamp snow from boots, hang cloaks by fire, offer news of village or road. Stories swell louder, punctuated by crack of wood and bubbling of pot. Hospitality matters even when food plain. Sharing warmth and drink is holy and human. Finally, stew is ready. The mother or cook ladles into wooden bowls. Father carves extra meat if any saved. Each receives share not equal, but fair. Elders and workers need strength. Children get smaller bowls but extra bread. Before eating, a brief prayer thanks God for food and safe shelter. Candles or rushlights glow, their small flames doubled in eyes around table. Eating is slow and companionable. Spoons scrape wood, bread soaks broth, steam fogs faces. Conversation pauses for warmth of mouthfuls, then resumes, plans for tomorrow's chores, weaving, repairs, maybe small gossip about Lord Steward or neighbor's new pig. Outside wind moans but seems far away. If it is feast season, Christmas, Epiphany, supper brightens. Perhaps a small roast, spiced cakes, or honeyed apples appear. Candles multiply, carols sung softly. Children receive nuts or dried fruit, treasured treats. Even poor families save something special for these holy nights, believing joy invites blessing. Light and shadow weave quietly. Fire throws dancing images on beams, saints, medals, drying herbs, tools stacked ready. Cats purr at edge of warmth, dog sighs asleep by door. Crackle and pop of logs join hum of talk. Time seems to slow, held safe within thick walls and long tradition. After bowls emptied, chores resume briefly, dishes rinsed with hot water, ash and sand scrubbing, scraps tossed to animals, pot hung aside for morning porridge, fire banked low but left glowing, vital spark for dawn, children tucked on pallets near warmth, wrapped in wool or straw-filled mattress. Elders linger a little longer, telling one last tale or prayer. Sometimes evenings bring small craft. Father mends harness, mother spins wool, older boy whittles spoon. Music may come if lute or pipe owned. More often a voice lifts in song, gentle and slow. Stories of saints, heroes, or long-gone kin circle the hearth, teaching and entertaining. Beyond door, darkness deep and cold. Snow falls on silent lane, muffling world. Wolves may howl distant. Church bell may sound hour. But inside is warmth, bread-filled bellies, shared company. It is a small fortress against winter, humble yet strong. Such suppers repeated night after night built quiet survival, no grand banquets, no music of minstrels, yet these meals nourished Europe as surely as any feast. They taught thrift, patience, sharing. They wrapped families in heat and light while cold pressed close. So when you think of medieval home, picture not only toil and hunger, but also this winter supper by the hearth. Slow stew, sturdy bread, lamplight and laughter softened by tired joy. It is a scene of ordinary grace, warming body and soul through the long, dark season. The bell in the parish tower tolls the late hour, and with each slow stroke the day loosens its hold on the town. In the lane where the smith's clang has long since fallen quiet, and the baker has banked his oven, a low shop still glows with a steady, honeyed light. The door bears a carved sign of a taper and a hive, worn smooth by fingers and weather. Within, the air is warm and sweet, rich with the smell of beeswax and faint smoke, and the soft drip of cooling wax marks the passing moments like a second, gentler clock. Master Corbin, the candlemaker, moves with unhurried certainty between the dipping frame and the hearth. He is a big man grown gentle with craft, his hands shiny from years of wax and warm water, his hair threaded with ash gray. A leather apron hangs from his shoulders, stained 100 shades of gold and brown. He hums under his breath as he checks the wick strings hanging in even ranks, each pair swaying slightly in the draught when he passes. The day's last cauldron of tallow breathes a faint, savory scent from the hearthside, stirred now and again so it will not skin over. Beside it, the beeswax pot is kept in a gentler heat, its surface gleaming like liquid amber. Corbin knows them both the way a shepherd knows his flock, which will harden quickest, which must be coaxed. He dips the frames in turn down into warmth, into air, and the scaffolds of pale cylinders gain a whisper more thickness with every pass. Beside the window sits a boy at a bench, fingers nimble though still nicked with small cuts. This is Noel, Corbin's apprentice, who minds the wick bobbins and ties them in even lengths along the ash rods. His tongue peeps from the corner of his mouth when the twine grows stubborn. He glances now and then toward the street where dusk collects, but soon the rhythm of wax and thread claims him again, and the shop's hush settles over his shoulders like a shawl. On a shelf against the wall rest molds of pewter and clay, stout cylinders for altar candles, smaller forms for chamber tapers, and a handful of little scallop shells for Saints' Day lights. Corbin runs a thumb along the seam of one mold, feeling for the burr that would mar the candle's flank. He has learned to find such faults by touch in failing light. His hands remember what eyes can miss. Satisfied, he pours a trickle of beeswax into one shell, only enough to scent the room with summer fields. The beeswax holds its own tale, gathered from skeps kept in an orchard outside the walls where hives hum like quiet kettles. Corbin bartered for it in spring, when blossoms hung white as froth and the beekeeper's veil trembled with wings. He warmed and cleaned it then, straining out the stray legs and dust, skimming off the dross to leave a heart of clear, sweet wax. The memory of sun in clover seems to wake again when the pot steams, even now as night presses close to the panes. Tallow is humbler and more plentiful, given in misshaped lumps from the butcher's yard. Corbin renders it in great kettles with ladle and patience, washing it in brine, skimming and cooling and skimming again until the sour edge is tamed. He makes the town's workaday light from it, rushlight cups for poor households, stout stubs for stable and stall, long tapers for winter spinning. He keeps wax for those who would pay, and for church days when every flame should smell of honey and field. Noel lifts a frame, the new-formed tapers damp and creamy, and carries it toward the open back door where the air runs cool from the yard. He hangs it on a peg beneath the lintel, so the night breeze will kiss each strand. Corbin follows with another, and together they watch droplets bead and fall, gathering on the trodden earth like pale pearls that will be melted again before the week is out. The sky above their narrow yard holds the first faint star, shy behind a veil of smoke. In the lane, a woman pauses at the door with her basket, peering into the warm glow. She is the baker's sister, needing 2 tapers for a sick room and a rush basket of small spills for morning kindling. Corbin wipes his hands and serves her without fuss, choosing 2 neat wax tapers from yesterday's rack, their wicks trimmed right, their ends pressed flat so they will sit steady in a pewter cup. He adds a twist of shaved wick for quick catching, and the woman leaves with thanks, her eyes lingering on the comfort of the lit shop before she turns into the purple evening. When the door shuts again, the room seems to breathe. Corbin stirs the tallow pot and wipes the rim with the hem of his cloth. He sets about trimming a row of moles with a small, sharp knife, shaving away a seam so thin it curls like onion skin. Noel sweeps the floor with a straw broom, pushing pale crumbs into a shallow pan. They keep everything that can be melted. Nothing of light is wasted here. On the back wall hang skeins of wick spun from flax, the strands plied just so, each whirl set in the twist that burns best in tallow or wax. Corbin lifts one and rubs it between finger and thumb, testing for bite. He teaches Noel the old matter, learned from his own master: too hard a twist and the flame gutters, too soft and it droop and smokes. Wax likes a sweeter draw, tallow wants string with spine. The boy nods and repeats the feel in his hands, storing it in the book of the body. When the bell at the Guildhall tolls again, Dotton last slow note for the working day. Corbin snuffs the little oil lamp near the scales and draws the shutter to half. The lane outside grows dim as a well. Only the candlemaker's shop glows on, a small, steady hearth for the street. Sometimes folk pass and glance in with soft faces, not to buy but to take comfort. Corbin pretends not to notice. He knows what the sight of ordered light can do to a tired heart. He turns to the bench by the hearth and takes up the fine knife he keeps wrapped in cloth. On a board a row of candles wait for finishing, the bottoms to be shaved true, the tops to be crowned with a neat pinch, the wicks to be snuffed and cut to the breadth of a fingernail. He works slowly, letting each cylinder roll once beneath the blade. Noel watches and imitates on a practice piece, tongue caught between teeth, eyes narrowing with concentration. From time to time, Corbin lays a thumbprint at the base of a candle bound for the church, only the faintest pressure, hidden beneath the later ring of wax that seals it to the spike. It is a private pledge that it will burn well on the day when the parish gathers, that it will not gutter in the draught by the north door, that its flame will be steady as prayer. He never speaks of it to anyone, but he feels the promise settle in his chest like a known weight. A soft tap at the door announces the sexton, cap in hand, coat brushed for evening rounds. He needs a dozen thin tapers for the side altar and 2 stout pillars for the feast of the coming week. Corbin measures his stock and nods, setting aside the pillars of wax, pale as cream, and dipping a fresh round of tapers while the sexton warms his hands by the hearth. They talk in low voices of weather and of a neighbor's ailing cow, of a christening set for Sunday. Their words fold into the room's warmth like another layer of wax, thin and good. When the sexton has gone and the shutters are drawn to slits, Noel tends the last of small tasks, coiling the spare wick, wiping the rims of ladles, washing bowls of their sticky sheen with hot water from the kettle until they shine. Corbin banks the hearth with a split log and drags a screen close so the last heat will be gentle. He moves from bench to peg to shelf, palming each tool as if to bless it. Make sure no knife lies edge up, no cord hangs loose where it might catch fire, no mold sits where cooling might crack it. On a small ledge near the counting scales sits a box of oddments, half-burned stubs left in payment by thrifty customers, ends gathered from the church after feast day, stubby candles too short for holders. Corbin melts them down together in a little pan, skimming out dead flies and grit, and pours the clean portion into a shallow dish lined with a scrap of linen. When it cools, he will cut it into blocks for poor neighbors in bad weather. Light is dear, but it is never denied when need is real. The shop settles into its last work for the night. Quiet wrapping, Corbin takes sheets of rough paper and folds them around pairs of candles, tying each with thread and sealing the knot with a kiss of wax. His fingers move without thought, strong and careful. Noel writes a crooked mark on each packet, the sign they use for size and burn, a little stroke for a short hour, a longer one for 2, a neat cross for those that will outlast a winter prayer. The boy's letters are poor, but he reads the language of flame well enough. Beyond the door the lane murmurs with the last steps of passers-by, then grows still. A cat slinks past the threshold and pauses to blink at the warmth within. Corbin's boot tap sends it on without offense. Far away a shutter claps and the sound carries like a small wave. In the loft above the shop a mouse tick-ticks somewhere in the thatch, and Noel glances Dut with a grin that says he will set a bowl of lye on the steps tonight to make the boards unfriendly. When at last the dipping frames are heavy with the day's labor and the pegs hold their forests of cooling light, Corbin wipes his hands on taut leather and stretches his back. He draws the bench near the hearth and sits for the first time in hours. Noel pours water from a blackened kettle into 2 cups where a few leaves of mint float, pale as the last of summer. They drink without words, watching the last bubbles wink on the pot. Corbin's eyes roam the room as a shepherd counts sheep by moonlight. Molds and frames, rods and rings, skeins of wick, and the generous curve of the beeswax pot, the bared end of a pillar waiting to be leveled, the rack by the door where tomorrow's orders hang. His gaze lingers on a fat candle for a wedding, its side incised with simple plated lines and a heart no one will notice once it burns. He smiles and sets the cup aside. Work gives they to small rites of closing. He combs a warm knife along each row to smooth ridges, pinches tops like a priest laying hands in blessing, twirls the end of each wick and nips it short. Noel follows with a shallow pan to catch the trimmings. From the rafters they lift 2 bundles of rushes long, as a man's forearm, peeled and dried and dipped swiftly in tallow earlier in the year. These are for households that cannot pay for wax, good light for mending and mulling, quick to flare, sharp to scent, but honest and bright. There is a jar on the shelf above the scales that holds a few coins and a scatter of buttons, a fishhook, a pewter charm of St. Blaise. Customers pay as they can. Corbin taps the lid with a knuckle and the sound rings thin. It will do. He isn't rich, but he keeps his head above the flood, and the flood has been cruel to others this year. He thinks of the widow in the crooked lane who came last frost with blue hands and left with 4 tallow stubs wrapped with string. He set no price, and she set none either, and yet the next week a loaf was left at his door. A draught steals in from the yard and fidgets the nearest wicks. Corbin lays his palm against the lower crack of the shutter to feel where the wind teeth at it. Tomorrow he will plane the edge and set a new strip of felt. Night asks for tight houses. Flame loves snug rooms where its breath can climb straight. He rubs his knuckles as the thought takes hold. A memory stirs of a winter long ago when he worked by lantern in a shop with a broken pane, and the light trembled as if frightened while his master muttered about stingy landlords. Noel breaks the stillness. "Master," he says, and holds up a small warped taper he has made for himself from scraped leavings. It leans like a sapling bowed by wind. Corbin takes it and weighs it, rolling it on the board to show the boy why it curves. "Patience," he says, not unkindly. "Warm hands, even dipping. You cannot hurry heat." He gives the candle back and points to a practice frame. Noel shrugs and smiles, tucks the little taper in his pouch, and sets to tie fresh wicks for tomorrow's tries. At last the hour turns. Corbin takes the long snuffer from its peg, a copper bell on a bent rod, and goes from lamp to lamp. The flame under the beeswax pot bows and is gone, a thin thread of smoke curling like the tail of a cat. The oil lamp by the ledger flickers, flares once like a small brave heart, and succumbs. Only one candle he leaves, a humble tallow stub on the bench by the hearth, to keep them company as they make the final check of latches and banks. The room grows tender in the single flame. He opens the ledger and marks the day with slow script. Wax 24 altar, tallow 40 for the town watch, rush bundles 6, a note of the beekeeper's son coming on Thursday with cappings, the sexton's order set by for Saturday, the knife to be honed, the shutter to be planed. Noel leans over his shoulder, lips moving with the shapes even if the letters blur. He is learning to read as the poor learn to sing by ear and by heart before the eye follows. They climb the narrow stair to the loft to fetch their cloaks. The room above the shop smells of warm timber and dry straw. Through the small gable window, the town shows a scatter of lights, each a tiny kin of the ones they have made. Somewhere in the distance, a mother hushes a child, a dog coughs, the night watch calls the hour. Noel stands a moment and watches his own breath pale the glass. "To bed," Corbin says, and the boy laughs. "Soon." Back below, the master lifts the remaining tapers one by one and lays them in a shallow tray so their cooling will finish without warping. He strokes their sides with a warm thumb, smoothing what the air has roughened. He scents his hand after with beeswax, and rubs the smell into his beard with a pleased grunt. Noel bundles the rushes and sets them by the door, the first task for morning trade. Corbin goes to the yard and whistles once, a soft note, and from the shadows a pair of late bees, lost from a neighbor's hive, stumble around the rim of an empty pot. He nudges them onto a splinter and sets them on a honeyed shard he keeps for such wanderers. They clamber like drunks to a table at last call. He shakes his head, smiling at the small folly of rescuing insects in the chill, but does it all the same. Light owes much to their work. A man should pay his debts. He latches the back door, sets the bar in its brackets, and turns to the shop for the last time. The single tallow flame makes a soft bell of light around the bench, and in that quiet the candlemaker stands with his palm laid flat upon the board as if to feel the slow heartbeat of the place. He thinks of houses across the town where bedchambers will be warmed by what he has made, a mother drawing a sheet over a drowsy child by a candle's calm, a scholar pinching a wick before closing his book, a watchman's lantern painting circles on the gate stones. He pinches out the last flame with wetted fingers. Darkness flows in, cool and undemanding, and for a moment the shop is blind. Then the memory of light seems to hang in the air, a comfort that outlasts the spark. Corbin breathes in the sweet ghost of beeswax and the last whisper of smoke, takes up his cloak, and opens the door to the deep blue lane. Night receives him, wide and soft as a cloak, and he steps into it with the ease of a man who has fed it well. Outside, stars lean close over the crooked eaves, and the town lies tucked like a sleeping child. A few windows still burn here and there, late work, late prayer, late love. Corbin pulls his hood up and walks, Noel at his side matching his steps, their boots a quiet counter on the stones. Behind them, in the dark shop, rows of smooth candles cool and set, holding within them the day's steady labor and a promise for tomorrow's dusk. They part at the mouth of the close, the boy toward his lodging under the stairs of the cooper's yard, the master toward the low house he shares with a sister and a gentle-voiced husband. "Mind your taper," Corbin says, nodding toward the boy's pouch. "Keep it straight." Noel laughs and lifts a hand. "I will." The street swallows him, and Corbin goes on, counting the hills and hollows he knows by feel, the places where wicks burn quick in winter draughts and where no light dares gutter. At his own door he pauses and looks back. The lane is dark but not forsaken. The church tower is a shade against the sky, the guild hall a square shadow. He can almost see the glow of his shop, even shuttered, as if warmth had stained the night. He slips inside, lays his cloak on the peg, and, by habit, lights a small wax taper kept for the purpose. It blooms at once, eager and clear, and throws a circle of balm around table and chair. He breathes out, and the house breathes with him. He banks the home hearth, checks the bolt, and sets the taper on a saucer by the bed. Beside it lies a knife, a string, a bit of honeycomb wrapped in linen for sore throats. He sits to pull off his boots and rubs his hands, feeling the day still in them, weight of frames, the pull of wicks, the heat of pots. He closes his eyes and the light wavers on the lids like a field of buttercups in wind. For a time he simply sits, listening to the small hush a candle makes, like a cat's purr, like a prayer almost said. When he lies down, he does not snuff the taper at once. He watches the little flame right itself upon the rafters and thinks of the road of light running from house to house this night. A seamstress's pricked finger forgiven by the clear glow of beeswax. A sailor's wife counting stitches against a tallow stub. A priest bending to read his last office beside a lamp that smells faintly of meadow. He feels himself part of that web, not the maker of it, but a servant, and the thought settles him for sleep. At last he takes the snuffer-cup in hand and lowers it until the flame bows and vanishes with a soft sigh. Darkness folds the room like a cloak on winter's shoulders. In it, Corbin hears the wick's faint thread of smoke, the whisper the wax leaves when it yields. He smiles into the black, turns to his side, and lets the night lay him down, trusting that when dawn returns, his shop will wake to light again, and the quiet work will begin anew. The last strokes of the curfew bell tremble into silence, and the narrow streets of the town sink into hush. Within a modest timbered house off the square, a single candle burns steady in an upper window. Its light falls across a small bedchamber where night is slowly being made ready, not by magic, but by calm, careful hands. Lady Onwin moves quietly, skirts brushing the rush-strewn floor. She is neither young nor old, but practiced in the art of evening, the gentle closing of one day and the welcoming of rest. Her hair is already unbound, falling in a pale braid down her back. Her gown is simple wool, softened by years of wear. She works without haste, letting the room settle with each small task. The shutters are closed first. She draws them in against the night air, fastens the wooden bar, and checks the cloth tucked to stop drafts. Outside, a last cart rattles home, but the sound comes muted now, safe behind timber and linen. She opens the small latch of the casement just long enough to breathe the cool evening stone, faint river scent, a trace of baking from the far baker's row, and then closes it again, satisfied. At the hearth, a low fire smolders. Anwin kneels to bank it with ash and a single split log, enough to keep the chill off without wasting wood. Sparks glow and then settle to a dim red, casting long, gentle shadows on the plastered walls. She sets a small iron pot on the trivet to warm a little water mixed with herbs for night comfort, a pinch of chamomile, a crumble of dried apple peel, a few mint leaves. The scent blooms green and sweet. The bed itself waits in quiet invitation. Its frame is oak, plain but sturdy, with carved leaves worn smooth where hands have rested for decades. She pulls back the coverlet, shakes out the linen sheets, and smooths them with slow palms. The mattress is straw newly fluffed at the harvest. She kneads it here and there to chase any lumps. Over the footrail she lays a quilt of faded but beloved pattern, and at the pillow's edge she tucks a sprig of lavender saved from summer. On the chest near the bed stands a small wooden box filled with night things, a comb, a wax tablet for stray thoughts, a tiny vial of oil for dry hands. Anwin opens it and takes the comb, drawing it through her long braid with steady strokes. Each pass releases the day's last tangles, the scent of soap and faint beeswax rising. She winds the hair into a loose coil and pins it with a single carved bone pin, then rubs the oil into her palms and along her temples. The candle on the wall shelf burns low but bright enough for her last quiet tasks. She takes a cloth and wipes the small window glass clear of soot. She straightens the stool where she will lay her cloak. A pair of shoes is set side by the hearth, each with a little wad of wool to dry and warm them. She picks up the day's sewing, an unfinished linen cuff, and tucks it into a basket with its needle secure, so no prick will surprise her in the morning. From the warming pot she pours the fragrant herb water into a clay cup and carries it to the bed. She sits, the quilts pooled around her, and sips in silence. Outside, the last dog bark fades. A watchman calls the hour somewhere far off. Her shoulders sink. The drink is gentle, coaxing her breath to slow, filling the chamber with the soft smell of apple and chamomile. There is a small ritual she keeps, opening the wax tablet and writing with its stylus any thought that might trouble her sleep, a task for tomorrow, a worry for a neighbor, a prayer for her sister's child. She does this slowly, the scratching sound small but sure. Then she closes the tablet and sets it beneath the cup. The thought is put aside, safe until dawn. Before extinguishing the light, Anwin kneels by the bed and prays in the old, simple way. Thanks for the day's work, for safe return from market, for the bread that baked well, for neighbors unharmed. She names those who might need comfort and ends with a soft sign of the cross. The hush afterward feels deeper, as if the room itself breathes. She slips beneath the linen, pulls the quilt to her chin, and lies listening a while. The faint creak of timbers cooling, the hush of the banked fire, the rustle of night outside, all these gather like a lullaby. The candle gutter flickers, but she does not yet snuff it. She watches the flame dance against the beams, a small, steady friend in the dark. On the beam above the hearth hangs a tiny charm of pewter, a crescent moon and stars. Her father hung it there when she was a child, say it would keep sleep gentle. She touches it now, a habit more than a belief, and smiles. The lavender at her pillow releases its faintest breath, summer remembered even in autumn's chill. Finally, she reaches for the snuffer, a plain iron cone on a short handle. She cups her other hand around the candle's base to catch wax and lowers the cone until the light bows and goes out with a small sigh. Darkness fills the room, but it is soft, perfumed with herbs and clean linen. She settles deeper, feeling the day truly close. Sleep comes not as a sudden fall, but as a tide rising gentle and sure. First she thinks of the market and its bright apples, then of her sister's letter, then nothing at all. The hearth ember glows faintly across the room, a single coal keeping watch. Somewhere in the town, bells will strike the next hour, but she will not hear. In this chamber, carefully readied, night holds her safe. Outside, the wind whispers along the street, shutters creak and settle. The candle on the wall shelf cools to pale wax. All the small acts of preparation, fire banked, bed smoothed, lavender laid, are now invisible but powerful, shaping a peace where dreams may wander untroubled.